Want to know the best way to sharpen your replaceable blade broadheads? Stick around. Okay, so sharpening a broadhead for some people is very intimidating, but actually it's an easy process. It just takes a little bit of time to do it right. So any type of broadhead can be sharpened. Any steel can be sharpened, but some steels are certainly going to dull faster than others or hold an edge better than others as well. So as we talk about broadheads, we talk about something that has to be extremely sharp. In fact, in some states' regulations, in their hunting regulations, when it comes to archery equipment, they specifically state sharp broadhead. Now, I'm sure it's up to that officer to determine what is sharp, but you owe it to yourself and to the game you're hunting to make sure you have the sharpest blades you can possibly have. Now, most conventional broadheads out of the box are super shaving sharp and wonderful, and you can get right out and hunt with those. But there are others that come out of the package, they may need some touch-up. Or maybe you are practicing with the broadhead you're going to hunt with, and it will certainly need some touch-up. Or you've used your broadhead, you put some nicks and dings in it, you got to pass through, and you want to go ahead and reuse that head. There's a great way that you can bring it back to shaving sharp that's quite simple, and I'm going to show you how to do that. First of all, there are several broadhead sharpening tools and guides available, and I am extremely fond of the Stay Sharp brand. It's very simple, it's very easy to use, and it's basically, once you have your blade positioned correctly in the guide, it's almost foolproof as long as you follow a few simple rules of sharpening. Now, some manufacturers will tell you a certain degree for the sharpener that you have to buy for a certain degree head, but often these sharpeners can run an expanse of different degrees based on how this blade is positioned in the holder. And so in order to do that, you have to loosen the screw and get it into where you can manipulate this blade in the holder a little bit. Now what I like to do is when I have it where I think it should be, I'll go ahead and lay it down and eyeball it and see if it's got the right angle and I'm going to get the full force of my material to cover my entire blade edge. But a great way to double check yourself and see that if you are getting the entire edge is just to take a Sharpie marker and cover up your blade edge completely. Just like that with the Sharpie, cover the whole blade, your sharpened surface of the blade. And then when you get it on your medium and you do a few strokes, every bit of that marker should be taken away, and now you know that you are encompassing the entire surface that needs to be sharpened. So a nice easy trick there. So I'm going to go ahead, now that I know that I got it right, I'm going to give it just a little bit more of a tightening, and then the next determination is what grit of sandpaper or diamond plate are you going to start with? Well, that goes back to how dull is your broadhead actually. One of the things you need to consider is if I'm starting with too light of a grit, like if my broadhead's really dull and I'm going to start with an 800 grit, I'm going to be sharpening forever and ever and ever and ever. Where I may need to start with a 400 or even a 240 grit so I can bite off some material right out of the gate, start that burr process, and be able to get ahead of the game without having to sharpen for hours at a time. So you have to determine what grit you're going to start with out of the gate. Now, whether you're using a stone or diamond plate or sandpaper, you need to determine where you're going to start, and again, using a grit that's going to take off enough material to get you a burr right out of the gate without having to take a ton of passes. So for us to start here, we're going to go ahead and start with 400 grit paper. Now, with the Stay Sharp guide, I already know that the blade is in place correctly, I'm at the right angle. All you have to do is make several passes. And in order to check process, the most important part of sharpening your broadhead, or anything with an edge for that matter, is the burr. If you don't have a burr, you are not taking off any metal and you're not making anything sharp. The burr is very easy to determine, especially on these higher grits, because you can actually feel it very easy. So once you've established the burr on one side on this grit, you want to go ahead and knock it off and establish the burr on the other side. It doesn't take long at all to get the burr on the other side, so we're going to go ahead and go from 400 to 800 grit next. Go to the other side, knock that burr off, and create a burr on the other side. Okay, got a burr there. We're going to jump up to 1200 grit. Now as you go through this process, theoretically you could stop at any time once you've gotten a burr and you've knocked it off. But the farther you go, the sharper you're going to get, the better edge you're going to get, but you have to maintain that burr through the whole process until the very end. And it's very, very important. Without the burr, you have accomplished nothing. So we're at the 1200 now. We're going to go ahead, knock that burr off that we've created with the 800 and create a new burr. Do the other side. Now you'll see also as you get up to these finer grit papers that you go from being able to see all the sandpaper grooves in your blade. They start getting smaller and smaller, and your edge starts getting shinier and shinier, and it starts to look pretty good. Now it does get a little bit harder to feel the burr at this stage. You can always use the paper test. Take a thin piece of paper, ride it up the blade, and it will catch the burr when you're having trouble feeling it. So our final grit, we're going to do the 2500 grit. It's so handy to have a guide like this, Stay Sharp guide, because you're doing the exact same thing over and over again at the correct angle. And that's where a lot of guys go wrong when they're sharpening, is they're using a tool that is not giving them a consistent angle stroke after stroke on the paper or on the diamond plate or whatever they're using. It's all about that consistency and having the right angle. Alright, so I have ever so slight of a burr after the 2400 grit. So I don't have a strop here, so one of the things that you can use is a piece of cardstock or a piece of cereal box that you cut out, cereal box, and you can use this to remove that burr at the very end and get your blade absolutely perfect. And the important thing at this step is that you're doing a backstroke only. So you want to make sure that you're on the burr side, and you're just going to take that and you're just going to do some backstroke. And you're going to remove that burr. And I got a little bit of buffing compound on here, but I'm going to take the blade out and clean it out, and we're going to see what we got.
Leave that in there.
Good. You can take it out. So you can see I have a really nice, shiny, clean edge there on both sides. I don't have a burr, and if we do a little bit of a sharpness test, we can see that we are going to just cut beautifully here. And there you have it.